Have you ever, peered into that looking glass of consciousness and just wondered if there's maybe a forgotten pathway, some shortcut to really profound spiritual understanding?
Mm.
What if those ancient mystical experiences, the ones you read about, weren't just for saints, but could be, well, chemically accessed?
It's a provocative thought, definitely.
Yeah, today we're diving deep into something that really challenges our perceptions of the mind, spirit, and what it even means to be awake.
Right.
Our journey takes us into the world of psychedelics, which is, well, fascinating and sometimes controversial. We're using journalist Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, as our guide.
A really groundbreaking piece of work.
Absolutely. And we're not just, skimming the surface here. We want to delve into how substances like, say, psilocybin or LSD might actually lead to genuine mystical experiences.
Uh-huh.
We'll trace their history, which is quite turbulent from ancient use right up to this modern rediscovery. It's this amazing intersection of science, spirituality, and, well, the human condition.
And our mission here, for you listening, is to really try and unpack this complicated story. We'll look at how these molecules were suppressed historically.
Which is a story in itself.
It really is. And then how they've cautiously started to reemerge. But more than that, we want to examine the science, what we know about how they might dissolve the ego temporarily.
That key concept.
Exactly. And how they produce experiences that people describe as, well, almost indistinguishable from what ancient mystics talked about. We want to explore the what and the why. Why does this matter? And hopefully encourage you to think critically about consciousness, spirituality, and that sort of deep human longing for meaning.
And to help us navigate all this, we've gathered insights not just from Pollan, but also from some really foundational texts. Things like Dark Night of the Soul,
St. John of the Cross,
The Cloud of Unknowing, the Bhagavad Gita, Siddhartha,
Brett Kicks,
Black Elk Speaks, even A Course in Miracles. So it's a broad perspective we're bringing.
multifaceted view, definitely.
Okay, let's start to unpack this. So Michael Pollan's central question in the book, it really cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? He actually asks if the kinds of experiences he had might someday be available not just for sick people.
Yeah. More widely available, I think is his phrase.
Right, and that's a bold statement. It moves way beyond just medicine, suggesting this broader, maybe existential or spiritual use.
It really does. He explicitly says they're far too valuable to limit to sick people. That fundamentally challenges how we usually think about these substances, as just tools for treating illness.
It hints at something more universal, like a potential for growth for anyone, not just recovery.
But what's really compelling is how careful he is. Even while suggesting something so transformative, he's open about his own positive recreational use, but then he immediately stresses the ideal way.
Which is?
Well, working one-on-one with an experienced guide in a safe place removed from my everyday life. That's not just a casual remark. It really underlines the importance of set and setting.
Set and setting. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. Set is basically your mindset, your intentions, what you expect, your emotional state going in. And setting is the actual environment, physical, social. Both are seen as absolutely critical for navigating what can be pretty overwhelming energies.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's about preparation and environment.
Exactly. And it's not a new idea. You see it embedded in indigenous traditions. Think about ayahuasca or peyote. It's almost always in these structured group settings, led by a shaman or guide.
Right.
So it raises this really important question for us now. What actually makes a safe container for this kind of deep inner work, especially when the experience can be so intense, sometimes wonderful, sometimes really challenging?
It's more than just physical safety then. It's psychological, spiritual grounding.
Precisely. A space where you can be vulnerable, where meaning can be processed afterwards.
Okay, so that safe container is key. But let's clarify something else. When Pollan and these traditions talk about mystical experiences, what are we actually talking about? Is there a common thread, maybe tied to this idea of ego dissolution?
Yeah, that's a great question because mystical experience can sound pretty vague, can't it?
It can.
At its core, ego dissolution seems to be this temporary but really profound blurring or even vanishing of your usual sense of self. The I that's always narrating, judging, planning.
The internal monologue.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not like losing consciousness. It's more like shifting from that limited individual viewpoint to something much wider, more interconnected.
And people often report.
Things like a sense of unity with everything, timelessness, profound positive feelings, joy, love, a sense of sacredness, and also ineffability. That just means it's incredibly hard to describe in
All
words.
right, it defies language.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you connect that to the wisdom traditions, many ancient texts describe states that sound incredibly similar. Take St. John of the Cross in Dark Night of the Soul.
Okay.
He talks about the understanding being purged and annihilated as to his natural light, brought actually into darkness, so it could be united with that light and become divine.
Annihilated sounds pretty intense.
It does. He describes this darkness as feeling substantial, like a real stripping away of the ordinary self, the mind's usual ways of working. The ego, with its habits and identifications, gets dismantled.
And the goal.
For St. John, it's achieving this simple and pure disposition to receive these rare and sublime touches of divine love, a state where the individual ego doesn't block the divine anymore. So the parallel to ego dissolution reported with psychedelics is striking. It suggests maybe there's this universal architecture of consciousness, and these chemicals might offer a temporary, maybe accelerated window into states mystics work towards for decades.
So it's not saying psychedelics are mysticism.
No, not at all. But maybe they offer a pathway, a challenging one, but an accessible one, to explore these very human, transformative states.
Yeah.
It forces us to rethink how we categorize spiritual understanding, moving beyond the self-centered view to something much bigger.
So this profound potential exists, these echoes across traditions. But as we know, the story wasn't straightforward. Let's rewind a bit. How did society first encounter these things and then react? Because this part is really fascinating, the initial promise and then the crackdown.
Yeah, it's quite the roller coaster. Before the whole cultural explosion in the mid-20th century, there was actually a period of real scientific curiosity. Optimism, even.
Like who?
Well, pioneers like Humphrey Osmond, the British psychiatrist Pollan talks a lot about. Osmond, along with others like Abram Hoffer, did some truly groundbreaking work with mescaline and LSD.
What were they looking at?
Particularly treating alcoholism, believe it or not, and some other mental health issues. And their results, well, they were often surprisingly good. Much better remission rates than standard therapies back then.
Really?
Yeah, and it wasn't just random anecdotes. They were developing a whole psychedelic therapy paradigm, really focusing on preparing the patient, creating that supportive setting we talked about, and then helping them integrate the insights afterwards.
So a structured approach.
Very much so. And Osmond actually coined the term psychedelic back in '56. It means mind manifesting. He chose it specifically because these substances seem to reveal hidden aspects of the mind. So there's this real hope about their potential for self-exploration and healing.
And you mentioned it wasn't just strictly medical either.
That's right. What's really interesting is Osmond was also involved with something called the Commission for the Study of Creative Imagination.
Wow. So they were thinking bigger than just illness.
Exactly. They saw them potentially as keys to unlocking creativity, maybe fostering new ways of thinking, enhancing human experience generally, not just fixing problems. A much grander vision, really.
But that vision didn't last long, did it?
No, it definitely didn't. That promising start just crashed headlong into a very different public narrative. Those political landmines Pollan mentions, they basically detonated.
What?
Well, the scientific curiosity got completely overshadowed by public fear, misinformation, and eventually government suppression. You had figures like Timothy Leary, who came from academia but started advocating for widespread, pretty unregulated use.
Turn on, tune in, drop out.
Right, that kind of thing. It blurred the lines between careful therapy and just recreational use. And then you add in the substances getting linked with the counterculture, student protests, the social upheaval of the 60s.
A perfect storm.
Absolutely. Psychedelics suddenly became symbols of rebellion, anti-establishment feelings, a breakdown of norms.
And the media jumped on it.
Oh, big time. Sensationalized stories, really pushing the bad trip narrative. Pollan even notes, sooner or later it seems, everyone has a trip for which bad is far too pallid a modifier.
So fear took over.
Yeah. These scary accounts, whether totally accurate or maybe amplified a bit, fed into this general cultural anxiety. Governments reacted swiftly. Eventually, you get the Controlled Substances Act in 1970 in the U.S., classifying LSD, psilocybin as Schedule I. High potential for abuse, no accepted medical use. That basically slammed the brakes on scientific research for decades. It was the start of the psychedelic dark age.
It seems like it wasn't just about the drugs themselves, maybe, but about the challenge they posed to normal consciousness.
I think that's a huge part of it. Society seemed to grapple with and ultimately reject the profound alteration of mind these things could cause. The potential for disorientation, for challenging reality itself, became a major public concern, and, well, fear won out.
It really is a compelling and maybe cautionary story. So we go from that dark age and now fast forward to today, and there's this incredible renaissance happening.
A definite resurgence, yeah.
The medical community is looking at psychedelics again for things like severe depression, PTSD, OCD, even end-of-life anxiety, conditions often linked to what Pollan calls the ego's tyranny.
Or those really ingrained negative thinking habits, right? Those cycles that just trap people.
Exactly. So the question is, how do these substances actually help with such deep-seated problems?
Well, Pollan, drawing on neuroscience research, suggests they disrupt what scientists sometimes call an excess of order in the brain.
Excess of order. That sounds counterintuitive.
It does a bit, yeah.
Ah.
But think about the default mode network, the DMN. It's kind of like your brain's internal editor or narrator, always busy with self-reflection, planning, thinking about yourself, maintaining that sense of me.
Okay.
In conditions like depression or OCD, this network can become hyperactive, way too rigid. It traps people in rumination, negative self-talk, obsessive loops.
Right, stuck on repeat.
Exactly. Psychedelics seem to temporarily quiet down this DMN. And crucially, they allow other parts of the brain that don't normally talk much to connect in new ways.
Like opening up new lines of communication.
Precisely. It's like the CEO takes the day off and all the departments suddenly start brainstorming freely without the usual top-down control. This disruption of order breaks down those rigid, habitual thought patterns.
So it's not just managing symptoms, it's potentially restructuring things.
That seems to be the idea. It offers a different approach, aiming for a fundamental shift in perception in your relationship with yourself and the world. By dissolving those rigid ego structures temporarily and boosting connectivity, it creates an opening, new perspectives, release from mental prisons.
That makes a lot of sense. But Pollan's big point is that these experiences shouldn't just be for sick people. That points to something deeper, doesn't it? Like a universal human need.
Absolutely. Beyond just fixing pathology, it suggests this unmet longing for, well, spiritual or existential understanding that these substances might tap into. A longing our modern society maybe struggles to address.
How so?
Well, if you connect it to thinkers like Joseph Campbell, in The Power of Myth, he talks about the spiritual deed, the hero's journey, right? Where the hero experiences this supernormal range of human spiritual life and comes back with a message, with wisdom. Campbell kind of lamented this sociological stagnation, as he called it, these inauthentic lives that settle upon us. He saw a deep longing for spiritual awakening, for meaning that wasn't being met.
So psychedelics as a modern path for that hero's journey.
Maybe. Perhaps they're being explored as one possible way to undertake that kind of adventure Campbell describes, a quest to recover what has been lost, or find some life-giving elixir.
What's been lost in this view?
Perhaps that sense of unity, interconnectedness, inherent meaning that the everyday ego often obscures. So the insights aren't just about alleviating suffering, they're about enriching the whole human experience, pointing towards a kind of flourishing beyond just getting by.
That connection to the hero's journey is powerful. Okay, so let's really drill down into this core concept, ego dissolution. Pollan talks about it, and the ego's tyranny. We've touched on it, but let's unpack it more. What's actually happening when the ego dissolves? How does this different self emerge?
Right. When we talk about ego dissolution, we mean that sense of individual self, the I narrating, judging, defining me versus you, starts to blur or become porous, or maybe even just vanishes for a time.
But you're still conscious.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's more like experiencing awareness without that habitual filter of the narrative self.
Okay, so how do other traditions describe this? You mentioned A Course in Miracles earlier.
Yes. Our Course in Miracles describes the ego's picture of you as deprived, unloving, and vulnerable. And it actually tells you to escape from this image by leaving it behind, saying flat out, you are not there and that is not you.
Wow, that's direct.
It really is. It directly mirrors shedding a false, limited identity. And then look at the Bhagavad Gita. It talks about the mind being entangled in the material world because it's caught up with the false ego, which wants to dominate nature.
False ego here meaning?
Not necessarily being arrogant, but mistakenly identifying with the temporary stuff, possessions, roles, fleeting thoughts, emotions. The teaching is to deliver himself with the help of his mind, train it not to be attracted by the glitter of material nature.
Disentangling.
Exactly. Both traditions describe this process of disentangling from the ego's grip. And the psychedelic experience seems capable of inducing that powerfully, even if just temporarily. It's about seeing that the usual narrator isn't the whole story. It's a construct. And seeing through it allows something more fundamental to come through.
So When that ego loosens its hold, when the filter lifts, what's left? Is it just emptiness, or is it, as some sources suggest, a deeper, more unified self?
It seems to be the latter, based on reports and texts. Not emptiness, but an emergence of something more authentic, more unified. Think about Siddhartha again.
Hesisawa, yeah.
After years of seeking, the protagonist realizes he needs to learn from myself, want to be my student, get to know myself. He reaches this state of standing alone, listening to the divine voice in his own heart. That points to an inner wisdom, an inner teacher emerging when the external searching stops.
An inherent knowing.
Kind of. And the Bhagavad Gita describes this state even more explicitly, the Brahmabhuta stage.
What's that like?
It's described as being full in himself, totally absorbed in the divine connection, naturally joyful, seeing stone and gold are of equal value.
Equal value.
Meaning you're no longer swayed by material distinctions or personal desires because your identity has shifted from the limited self to this universal connection. Like realizing you're not just the wave, you're the ocean. It's profound contentment beyond ego attachment.
That wave and ocean analogy really helps. It reminds me of The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. He talks about consciousness as this field of awareness that usually focuses down to a point.
Right, concentrating on objects.
Yeah, and when it does that, it gets lost in the experience, defines itself by what it's focused on. But if that focus expands...
It can feel like extending into the universe with no limit, as Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance puts it.
Exactly. So ego dissolution isn't losing something, it's shifting the focus of awareness from that tight point to something vast.
Well put. And it's not passive.
Yeah.
Rollo May, the existential psychologist, wrote about this in The Courage to Create. He called it a state of heightened consciousness.
Heightened how?
Not just intellectually, but an intensification that sharpens senses, memory, everything. He said insight often comes from the unconscious, exactly where we're most consciously focused or struggling.
So it's active, integrative.
Yes, it challenges the idea that ego dissolution is just blissing out. It can be this dynamic process where deep stuff comes up, offering new insights, creative solutions, a reordering of your inner world, experiencing a deeper reality, not just escaping the everyday one. #tag parallels in mystical traditions.
It's really striking how concepts like ego dissolution, this expanded awareness, echo through ancient Eastern wisdom. It's like they've been mapping this territory for millennia. Let's look closer at Buddhism and Hinduism.
Definitely. In Siddhartha, that feeling of Atman in the depths of his being, indestructible, one with the universe, that's pure Vedanta, really. Atman in Hinduism isn't just your individual soul, it's the universal self, the eternal essence that is Brahman, the ultimate reality.
So it's realizing that fundamental oneness.
Exactly. A non-dual experience where me and universe dissolve. And you see a similar goal in Buddhism. The Dhammapada from the Theravada school stresses the purification of one's mind, being intent on meditating, and finding delight in the calm of going out.
Going out
of the ordinary conceptual chattering mind. This focus on mental purification is all about clearing the path to experience reality beyond the fragmented ego. Both traditions point towards transcending individual identity to connect with something universal. They're like ancient guidebooks for the territory Pollan explores.
And then you have the bodhisattvas in Mahayana Buddhism. That's a fascinating concept.
It really is. These are beings who could achieve enlightenment, enter nirvana, but they choose not to.
Why not?
On behalf of humanity. They stay in the cycle of rebirth to help guide everyone else towards enlightenment. That immense compassion, that commitment after achieving profound understanding, feels like a natural outcome of an ego-dissolved state, don't you think?
Absolutely. Moving from my liberation to our liberation.
Right. It reflects those 6 perfections: generosity, morality, patience, effort, meditation, wisdom. The self has expanded to include all beings.
But this isn't just an Eastern thing, is it? Western traditions, especially Christian mysticism, have their own paths that sound surprisingly similar.
Oh, completely. Take St. John of the Cross again with his dark night. That spiritual concealment from all that is creature, the soul becoming wholly spiritual. It's a path of profound detachment from the ego's attachments, leading to a purified self.
And St. Teresa of Avila.
His contemporary. In her interior castle, she describes the prayer of recollection. It's not passive. It's an active withdrawal inwards, collecting the mind's scattered focus.
And the result?
She says it leads to a dilation or enlargement of the soul. The soul becomes less constrained, gains much more freedom, finds firm confidence. It sounds very much like that inner expansion, that liberation from the ego's limits that people report. a recognition of inner vastness.
And the cloud of unknowing gives actual instructions for this, right?
It does. The anonymous author tells the reader to mean God all and all God, so that nothing else works in your mind or will, but only God.
A radical focus.
Totally. Aiming for this blind and devout,
Yeah.
stirring of love, a state of pure spirit without special thought. It sounds incredibly close to descriptions of non-conceptual awareness, a state beyond the ego's constant chatter and analysis. It's about letting go of thinking about God to experiencing God directly.
Shifting from concept to experience.
Exactly. And then moving beyond these more structured religious traditions, you have the incredibly powerful visionary experiences in indigenous cultures. Black Elk Speaks is just a stunning account.
The Lakota holy man.
Yes. His great vision being taken to the center of the world, meeting spirits, visiting the other world, seeing the ghost dance Messiah. These are incredibly rich, visually detailed, deeply meaningful experiences. They give us a vital cultural context for the mystical side of altered states.
And these visions weren't just personal insights.
No, they were often directive. He hears a voice saying, "Go at once, go home." Another medicine man gets a similar message. It highlights how these visions were often seen as direct communications, carrying guidance for the individual and the community. The insights weren't just kept private, they were integrated into the life of the people.
So the communal aspect is really important there.
Hugely important. It reminds us that this quest isn't always purely individual. It's often deeply woven into a cultural fabric.
It's clear these states are incredibly powerful, whether reached through ancient practices or modern means. Which brings us back to Pollan emphasizing that guide, that safe place. It makes sense, given the intensity. It's not just about physical safety, is it?
Not at all. It's about maximizing the potential for insight and, frankly, minimizing the chances of things going badly. That safe container or holding the space is vital because, as the untethered soul puts it, your sense of self depends on where your consciousness is focused. When that focus shifts so dramatically, as it does with psychedelics, it can be incredibly disorienting, even terrifying. That's where the bad trip can happen. A skilled guide acts like an anchor.
A grounded presence.
Exactly. Someone who can help you navigate the challenging bits, make sense of the weird stuff, and just ensure the whole process leads towards growth and integration, not just fear or confusion. They provide stability when your usual reality feels like it's dissolving. That human connection is a bridge back.
So whether it's a therapist, a shaman, a spiritual teacher, that experienced presence seems key across the board for navigating these inner landscapes.
It really seems to be a common thread, yeah. A recognition that these deep dives benefit hugely from wisdom, support, a steady hand.
Do the older spiritual texts explicitly mention guides in the same way Pollan does for psychedelic therapy?
Not always in that exact one-on-one clinical model, no. But the concept of mentorship, discernment, and accountability is definitely there. For instance, Theologia Germanica, that medieval text, talks about giving up one's own will to find that which is best. That implies needing guidance to avoid self-deception.
Making sure it's not just your ego tricking you.
Precisely. And the cloud of unknowing explicitly warns against sham spirituality and confusing genuine experiences with hallucination. It stresses the need for discernment. A guide, or a wise teacher or community, helps you sort through it all, interpret the experience, integrate it, make sure it's leading towards truth, not delusion. They help contextualize it.
That makes sense, distinguishing insight from just phenomena. Now, Pollan mentions both individual journeys, like in therapy, and group settings, like with ayahuasca or peyote. Are these just different styles, or do they serve different functions?
That's a great point, highlighting the variety. Joseph Campbell, back to the power of myth, really stresses the individual experience, a personal commitment and integration. That speaks to the power of the one-on-one model, where it's all about your journey.
Wow.
But traditions like the ghost dance that Black Elk described show the power of the collective. The whole community participates, holds the space, shares the intention, helps integrate the vision afterwards, even if one person had the primary experience.
So the group provides a different kind of support.
Yeah, a shared framework, a sense of belonging, collective integration. Individual exploration might lack that communal aspect. Both have unique strengths, depending on the context, the intention, the tradition. The group approach really underlines how our individual journeys can ripple out and affect the community. #tag societal implications and future horizons.
Okay, so we've looked deep into the individual transformation, but let's zoom out again. Pollan's provocative idea, these experiences shouldn't be limited to the sick. If we start seeing these shifts in consciousness as potentially beneficial for everyone, what does that mean for society?
That's the big question, isn't it? It forces us to ask about our definition of normal consciousness and maybe even societal health. Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul challenges that basic assumption that life is not okay just the way it is.
He blames fear for that.
Yeah, fear stemming from that part of you inside that's not okay with itself, essentially, the fear-based ego. If psychedelics can help temporarily dissolve that fearful ego, maybe they offer a path to a more accepting, joyful, authentic relationship with life itself.
Like finding peace with reality as it is.
Kind of. It echoes Deepak Chopra in The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success, talking about connecting with that abundant, affluent, infinite creative mind by getting beyond the turbulence of your internal dialogue. Imagine if a whole society started moving beyond that fear-based perception, the potential impact on well-being, connection, how we solve problems. It could be huge.
A collective reframing of what it means to thrive. That's powerful. It could even relate to Charles Taylor's idea in our secular age.
About the disenchantment of the world.
Exactly. He argues the Reformation shifted focus inward, onto the self, away from shared rituals connecting to God, leaving us with this kind of buffered self, seeking meaning only from within, feeling isolated. Could re-engaging with these profound embodied experiences, even chemically prompted ones, help re-enchant the world, move us beyond that isolated self, maybe reawaken a collective spiritual dimension?
It's a fascinating possibility. And if these experiences are so profound, does it imply our normal, everyday baseline consciousness is actually limited?
Yeah.
Maybe even just a concept we've all agreed on.
Like a filter we don't realize is there.
Maybe. Robert Pirsig in Zen and The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance has that radical line. The world has no existence whatsoever outside the human imagination. It's all a ghost. Your common sense is nothing more than the voices of thousands and thousands of these ghosts from the past.
Wow. So our reality is built on inherited ideas.
If Pirsig's right, then yeah. If our common sense is just a collection of old ghosts, then intentionally altering consciousness might be a way to peek beyond those frameworks, to actually change your mind about what's real or possible.
And Pollan notes that increased openness to experience seems to be a long-term effect of these journeys.
Exactly, which fits perfectly. It suggests a more flexible, less rigid, less dogmatic way of engaging with reality. It makes you wonder, what other dimensions might we perceive if we could just temporarily lift those inherited filters? #outro.
Well, we've really journeyed through quite a landscape today. The history, the suppression, the reemergence of psychedelics, how they might work through ego dissolution.
And those striking parallels in mystical traditions, East and West indigenous cultures.
Right. Plus the importance of guidance, intention, the safe container, and these bigger questions about society and consciousness itself. It's been a deep dive into what changing your mind could really mean.
It really has.
Yeah.
And it leaves us, and hopefully you listening, with this compelling question. If, as a text like Conversations with God suggests, our soul yearns for the highest experience of itself, and divinity is potentially everywhere, in every flower, every rainbow, could the careful, intentional exploration of these altered states be more than just therapy? Could it be a pathway, maybe a challenging one, but a pathway for all of us to reconnect with that universal essence, and maybe, as Julia Cameron suggests with her Morning Pages idea, become more truly ourselves?
Freeing that authentic voice.
Exactly. What might happen if we, as a society, really allowed ourselves the possibility of seeing the world anew, beyond our everyday limits, beyond the ego's usual grip? It's a question that invites us all, really, to think about the vast potential of our own consciousness and maybe our own willingness to explore it.